All right, hey there. So, trying to get really slowly into introducing a little bit more of my voice and the course material. This is not to give you a full lecture, but to start to hybridize the class a little bit more for you. So, I hope you're doing okay. I'm going to keep this video shorter than longer. I feel totally um, the totally I'm trying to think of a word. Can you tell I haven't been lecturing? Oh my goodness. Anyhow, I'll keep it short. So, chapter at a glance. This is chapter 8. Some of these things we've gone over um, when we were looking at, for example, the shopping cart study, and we were, thinking about self-understanding and emotional development, emotional self-regulation. Remember, we used that marshmallow study. The only thing I want to add here is a little bit of talking about this Erickson stage of initiative versus guilt. So what I do when I'm thinking about initiative versus guilt is I ask you to think of any time that you feel guilty. Like, what is that feeling of guilt? So just take a moment and reflect. I mean, we're all living in very complex situation now with a lot of people in our lives and around us. And we're going to maybe lose our. I mean, I had a grumpy day the other day. We sort of, hopefully, we trade off in my house who gets to have a grumpy day, it seems. But, and I did. I felt guilty about that later in the night, like why I was short tempered or why, whatever it was I had done to make me feel guilty. So there's different types of guilt. So if I feel guilty because I did something that was, probably not the best behavior, even if it was relatively mild, I mean, it's still irritating to nag at people or whatever. But that feeling of guilt is a good correction for me, right? So I think, oh yeah, I should feel a little guilty about that. I'm going to try to nip that in the bud because we're going to be here for what did Kemp just gave us another 30 days of sitting around inside. Um, so I would ask you to think about your feelings of guilt in that context, but also think about other types of guilt you can feel. So let's say maybe not under COVID quarantine, but other times if you've done something and been made to feel guilty by somebody else. So, I told you, you might say to somebody, or someone might say to you, why did you go and try to, do that by yourself? I told you I was going to do that with you. Well, maybe you went ahead and did it by yourself because you took initiative to do it, right? So if I don't know, anything, let's say a bill needed to be paid, um, you might say to yourself, well, if you're not going to do it, I got to go do this. I've waited, 2 weeks for you to help me pay this bill or to work through this problem. So someone can turn against you and make you feel guilty, right? Why didn't you wait? I asked you to wait for me. So is that really guilt that you should be feeling, or is that feeling of guilt trying to get you to think of the opposite, which is initiative? And I think it's perfectly okay to fight that feeling of guilt. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have waited. I don't know what I was doing. And kind of defend yourself a little bit and kind of say, look, I really think I waited an appropriate amount of time. I've been asking you to do this. Someone had to take initiative. So that's for me, a really good way to navigate initiative versus guilt. And I'll let you kind of think about that a little bit. This link is there for you. I moved everything on chapter 8 up to the top of the page. So you should be able to go in there and take a look easily. Just trying to scroll through here and to see, self-esteem, the development of self-esteem is a really slow process. So, I've talked to you about, trying to support people when they're young, thinking about Erickson stages to help them navigate all those verses, trust versus mistrust, so on and so forth. I also want you to start to think about supporting self-esteem in other ways. So how do you build the self-esteem? Why do some of us have such low self-esteem and others of us have a really good self-esteem? Where does that come from? Certainly part of that's just built into your DNA, your ability to tolerate, people oh, I don't know, whatever people do to each other to lower self-esteem, to make you feel stupid or lazy or not smart. Um, I mean, all of us are better at some things than other things. I definitely have a skill set, and it's something that is pretty firm with me. I mean, I'm not in my 20s. I've had a lot of time to develop certain sets of skills. However, having said that, I can always try to build sets of skills. So, me with the ukulele, I didn't know how to play it a couple of years ago. So, learning how to do that has taken a lot of time and practice. But I certainly have a better self-esteem about myself now with that one particular skill. I think this is why I love human development more than any other field, because regardless if you're a mathematician or if you're a musician or you're a history major, we all have self-esteem needs to be filled, and sometimes you have to fill them yourself. And sometimes you'll fill them yourself, and you'll really will improve, and you'll be better, and other people will feel threatened by that. You can think of examples in your own life and put you down a little bit. I mean, look at the risk you've taken going back to school or staying in school especially when the economy was good, which was honestly like 6 weeks ago. um, People may have said to you, hey, why are you doing that? You should be getting a job. You're wasting your money and your time and your education. But hey, who's winning now? You're winning now, because everyone now without jobs will start. And I saw this in 2009 when I started at CCGA. Everybody will start to go back to school, and you'll be ahead of the game. Trust me, you know what you're doing. All right. So let's just look a little bit about gender. You can think about gender. I'm just going to scroll down here. Emotional development, regulation. We talked about that stuff. The development of empathy. I think we're okay. Peer relations. Let's just talk a little bit about parenting and play. 2 P's, and then I'll stop this. I don't want to make screencasts more than 10 minutes. It's just not a good time to be belaboring anything. And we'll save Fridays for questions that will come up in the Collaborate at 2 that you're welcome to join. So it's really fun when you watch little kids play next to each other, and they'll do this thing called parallel play. So if you're 18 months and you're playing with some blocks, and you're sitting next to another 18-month-old and they're playing with some blocks, they're not playing together. They're playing in a parallel way. They're involved and engrossed with their own actions and mastering their own skill set. As you get a little bit older, closer to 2, you start to get some associative play, where you have separate activities, but you hand somebody a block, or you put your block onto theirs, and finally you get towards cooperative play, and you have a common goal, like let's build this. 4 and 5-year-olds they're really good at this. Let's build this tower together. Let's make a long road with all our blocks. And so that's a way to think about those different types of play. And finally, parenting. I'm not a behaviorist, but meaning that I don't think giving time outs and etc. are the best way to parent. But it is an organized way to parent. It is a skill you can develop, and just make sure you're doing it in a way that's appropriate for the age of the child. And I'm sure you've heard, so if you're 1, you get a 1-minute timeout. If you're 2, you get a 2-minute timeout. That at least expresses a non-aggressive way to somebody, assuming that they can sit without being, forcibly put on a step to sit or something. Not everyone's going to want to be a behaviorist or to be parented by a behaviorist. So work it out and do your best. Other than that, if you start super early, and I mean in infancy, talking and explaining, not behavior, but how the world works. This is how the world works. And if you violate the order of the world, then things get more difficult for everybody. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to, scream at the top of our lungs when we're at a service somewhere where people need to be quiet. And look, if they can't do it, then don't put them in a situation where they can't succeed. Just say, my 2-year-old's not really up to going to that. We're just not there yet. So, protecting them from situations where they're not going to be able to be successful. You're going to get caught in situations anyhow, so might as well not, on the fly of life, as we say. So, start early, talk, let them know how the world works, and you'll have a much easier go. Everyone's a little different, but that's what I say. Okay, looks like gender typing. You can look that over. That's really fun to kind of look at. And then when you have a chance, go through these different types of parenting styles. And that will be helpful for you for the course and helpful for you later when you take more classes with me, which I hope, or somebody else, which is fine. All right, take good care. Bye.